oh, she's doing it. Oh, you're doing what she's doing. I see.
You start with your craft. For me it was photography. I started taking pictures, I started posting about it, I started talking about it. Like, I did all these things that showed people the type of person I am and want to be and the work I want to create. That's easy. But to build it into a brand, the real challenge is in surviving long enough to do that. Because when you're starting, you don't have a clientele. You probably don't even know how to make money. I mean, I always say how one of the things that's interesting in my journey was learning to run a business and learning how to be a photographer at the same time. Building the brand meant I had to sustain myself while I did that. And that's the stuff that people don't really talk about. Not only does art take time, but it takes flexibility and freedom. And sometimes there's side hustles you gotta have to make it work. Sometimes you need some funding, sometimes someone's helping you out. But even just having the stability to explore something. And so the point being that it takes a foundation for you to create your work. And sometimes you do that for yourself with a day job. Sometimes someone else is helping you. But I think what's important for us to realize is that we do like to take these myths, really, or create these myths about other artists. The artists that wrote their novels during their lunch breaks, who made beats after work and into the night. And that helps us feel better about the struggle we're on. But not only is that not always the full story, even for those artists, but for so many artists that we see, it's not the case that they're struggling the way we think we are. So I think what I want to do is to just be realistic about what that struggle is, know what we're getting into, and move forward more strategically and in a way that's more pragmatic and realistic as an artist.
I'll go to dinner. I'm gonna bring.
What can you do for me?
Oh,
And then
America
people-
runs on Dunkin'. You're exposing me.
On there. Let me pull that.
Maybe I'll get a Dunkin' sponsorship.
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe it'll be.
So many people we admire were afforded an opportunity to create by a parent, a spouse, a sponsor of some kind. My favorite poet, Rainer Maria Rilke, he wrote one of his best works in a literal castle that a princess somewhere out in East Europe let him live in during the duration of his elegies that he was composing. And he was so indebted to her that the opening of the book reads, "Property of the Princess." And you don't need a castle to write a book of poems. It certainly makes things easier. And I don't know that you could ever truly quantify the amount of help people get, but I'd argue that even the invisible labor you don't see, like for example, in my situation, when I left my teaching job, my wife and I were both teachers, and we had insurance through her. When I quit my job, we were able to have coverage for my kids already, and that on its own was a huge burden off of my mind. We had a daughter at the time, later would have a second one, and that freed me up to be able to start this journey into another profession. And that's not something that often gets mentioned in a lot of stories, especially for men. They leave out the fact that they had a partner that was helping them, sometimes even literally with the business side of things, dealing with clients, booking them clients, but also just supporting them financially and with stability.
I mean, I feel like when you move to New York, it's an unspoken rule that like you're gonna have to side hustle into oblivion, and that's definitely what I did the first year I came. I definitely had a savings, and then I was nannying, I was walking dogs, I was teaching swim lessons, I was waitressing. Like, I really always had something else. And also doing those other things is just like, it's good to not be completely focused on one thing. It's good to have a break, and like, it makes you work for it. When you clock into your service industry shift and you're washing the dishes, thinking about your dreams, it makes you want to work harder and give you more motivation. So I think just don't be afraid to work hard, and there's a way, you just have to figure it out. Hey, if people are out there getting their drugs every day, then you can find a way to hustle. Like, I'm serious.
And so if you don't have a rich dad or a princess with a castle to put you in, and you want to live a creative life, you need to build your own support structure. And few people tell you how to do that. And especially early in your career, that often looks like saying yes to less glamorous opportunities. I always joke around how I would shoot anything that walks when I was getting started, and even things that didn't walk. I've shot newborns, real estate, but also a ton of weddings and events. That was really my bread and butter for my first couple years when I got into photography, and that helped me pay the mortgage and all the other bills and keep building my work. Sometimes building that foundation also means networking and pitching, going to other artists' events, becoming a part of a community. But look at all the famous artists you know. One thing that's a through line through the best of them is that if they didn't have a salesman on the team, they themselves were a salesman. And they knew how to sell their work, how to make strategic connections, and how to keep going. There's something to be said for being an advocate for your work and having that determination and the willingness to embarrass yourself. And that's something we don't realize as well, how embarrassing being an artist can be. And that what helps you survive is a determination, but a willingness to do the dirty work. And again, when we think about the creative dream, we're thinking, you know, as a photographer, shooting these massive campaigns, working with these celebrities, but how do you get there? If someone isn't funding you directly, you need a day job. And for me, I've been fortunate enough to build a day job that's around photography. You know, and like I said earlier in my career, that meant doing family portraits, weddings, events, all that stuff, before I was able to move into a more commercial role and work out of my studio and have more creative freedom with what I'm doing. But there's a day-to-day business that I have that allows me to do my more experimental stuff and hopefully would allow me to go even further and realize some more of my dreams. So when you think of your path as a creative, I think we have to be real about that. One, don't compare yourself with people who have opportunities, access, and funding that you don't have. That's just for your sanity. Two, figure out what a day-to-day creative life would actually look like for you, where you're a working professional. And then three, keep your eyes on the prize, have big dreams, and make sure every day you're doing something to move forward in that direction. Really, all of this is to say, I wouldn't be here without my wife, who puts up with me, who has a job with healthcare and forces me to make money. So my advice is just get out there and work like you got kids to feed.
If you give me permission, then I'm not being disobedient. You know,
I don't need to give you permission. The camera is your, is your
There's something
brush with the
beautiful
thing.
about human life being colored.
So, guys,
Okay.
what is the key to be free? Ready?
Pas mal. C'est génial. This is great.
It's
Actually, it's very funny.
It's not genial. No,
No, no, it's very funny.
it's a little genial. It is.